It's a new series today. It's called Sticky Stories. Sticky Stories, hashtag Sticky15, which is kind of fun to mess with. But here's the concept, is we started to talk about what is it that we wanted to do next, and we said, let's cover some stories of Jesus that kind of stick with you. Stories that, you can't quite get out of your head, and maybe they're stories that we don't really know well, but for some reason we know parts of them. They kind of stick with you. They sticky stories. And so the longer we talked about it, the more we went, they're sticky stories, and we thought that was a lot of fun. And so we put together a sermon series that really leads into VBS about Jesus, and these are all sticky stories of Jesus that stick with you. And what we want to do is we're going to cover sermon topics that you may know. You may go, I know that story really well. And what we hope to do is help you either know it even better, or some of you will have the experience that some of us have had, where all of a sudden you leave going, I had no idea what that was about, because what I thought it was about isn't what it was really about at all. And those are really neat moments when suddenly we build context around the scripture and we all go, ooh, that's really cool now. I just thought it was about that, but it's really about this, and it's really a neat, powerful story. And so the next several Sundays we're doing stories of Jesus that stick with you, and we've given you a sticky note, and what we want to do is we're going to actually prime you and prep you. We want to invite you. There's a big piece of paper out on the wall, and we've got one of those games where it actually spells out something. Now, we're not really cool. I mean, we're not going to build a picture of Jesus or anything, but what we want to do is we want to invite you on your sticky note to write down either, this is your option, but write down something in the sermon that stuck with you. But we also want to invite you to write down a name of someone that you know that's not here. That doesn't have a church home. And we want to invite you to begin praying for them, and we're going to be praying for them because coming up at the end of August, we're doing a sermon series called Why Church? And so what we want to do is we want to kind of blow that up and prep that up, but we believe in the power of prayer, and we believe that you have friends who aren't here who, if you had the opportunity to tell us, hey, we want you to pray for Joe, we'll be praying for Joe. And if you don't want his whole name or her whole name up there, just, hey, write Sally up there, and we're going to begin praying for Sally with you, because we're going to read the board and see all the names. And so we want you to take your sticky note. All right, and this gets a little complicated. There should be a number on it, and there's a code out on the wall, and you got to put it properly near the giving kiosk. All right, where if you come this morning and you're like, oh man, I didn't bring any cash or check for the offering, because you're like me and you never use those, you can give it at the kiosk. But right beside the kiosk is a big piece of paper, and you can put your sticky note on there. And again, it's going to spell something for us, but we're going to use that to pray for and over people for the next month. So that's what your sticky note is about. Again, you write something about the sermon or something about God that's really hit you or stuck out with you, a prayer request, or again, especially someone that we can be praying for that's not here. Not in any church, not just not here, but not in any church right now that we can be praying for. So our story today comes out of Matthew 5. Jesus is giving what we call traditionally in the church the Sermon on the Mount. And basically he's talking, and we have the story comes where he's talking to this mass crowd. Could be as many as 5,000, which is why he has to be on the mountain, so the acoustics he can be heard, because the PA systems back when Jesus was around were terrible. And so Jesus is on a mountain, and he's preaching, and he's giving this message. And if you've got your e-vice, we want to invite you to turn with us to Matthew 5, verse 38. Matthew 5, verse 38. Again, hashtag Sticky15 is what we want you to tweet at. All right, you ready? Matthew 5, verse 38. Again, familiar story or not, you're going to walk away going, hey, that's kind of stuck with me. You ready? Jesus says, for you have heard it said. Now, the reason Jesus says, for you have heard it said, was because people had heard it was said, right? And what that means is that this was a familiar saying. It's not complicated. Jesus isn't trying to trick us here. He's saying, hey, this is a popular saying in our culture. Now, what's funny is that this actual phrase still continues on in our culture today, that there is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Anybody heard that one? Right? It didn't even know it came from the Bible. Yeah, this is actually in the Old Testament. And I just want to sit here for just a second, because there's another side note here that I want to bring about. This is actually in Deuteronomy, that if someone gouges out your eye, you have permission to gouge out their eye. If someone knocks your teeth out, you have permission to knock their teeth out. And what's really interesting is people read the Old Testament, they read phrases like this, and they go, look, you see, Jesus came and then God got nice. Yeah. That's what have you heard that? Like the Old Testament, like God's kind of a mean dude. In the New Testament, God gets nicer. Or in the Old Testament, God's all about the law. In the New Testament, God's about grace. Have you heard any of those? Someone who doesn't really understand and they say silly things like that. And so I want to just help you be smarter so that you never say anything silly like that. And when you read in the Old Testament, it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What it really was is that God had put down a law saying, look, this is the maximum penalty that you can inflict on somebody else. It wasn't God saying if someone gouges out your eye, you have to go out and gouge theirs out. God was really a God of grace even in the Old Testament. And he was saying, look, if someone comes and they harm you, this is the maximum penalty you're able to prescribe. Really, God is preventing people from becoming a people of vengeance and wrathful justice. All right, yeah, you broke my leg, but now I've killed your whole family. Right? And so God's saying, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, if someone broke your leg, you may break their leg, but you can't go kill their whole family. That's not really how I want you to live, but this is the maximum judgment and justice you're able to imply in a situation. And what I really want you to do is be a people of grace. So even in the Old Testament, God gives us this law to say that's the maximum penalty you're able to bring and inflict upon your neighbor. And so God isn't getting nicer. In fact, Jesus doesn't say that all goes away. All right, so Jesus is saying, look, you want to be a people of justice, you want to be smart, you want to know how God likes to see it. He says, for you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And then Jesus rolls into kind of this neat moment here where he teaches us how to live a different way, bringing us back to the grace that God really wanted all along that got lost somewhere along the way. And we've never seen that from anybody, right? Like we didn't behave the way God wanted us to, right? We've never seen that at all from anybody in churches, right? Right. All right. So here's what Jesus says then. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. I wonder what that means. I mean, don't resist an evil person. Jesus says, look, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If you missed that, it's not happening again. Okay. It was like coming over here late, or what was the deal over there, Medina? You just get it? She's like all tweeting like, what happened? What'd I miss? So now, we've heard this before, and a lot of people have mistranslated this and like said it wrong, and they've used this and quoted it wrong, and it's kind of stuck with us. Even in our culture, we go, we should just turn the other cheek, right? And we hear that from people who've never even been to church, and we go, what does this mean? All right, because we think, hey, what Jesus really means is he means you should be an absolute pacifist, and that we should never be involved in war. And I've heard all kinds of crazy stories around this, and one guy even was trying to convince me that, no, it's about martial arts, and I'm so fast, I turn my cheek, and you can't even hit me. And I'm sitting there staring at this guy going, I'm positive Jesus wasn't thinking anything with judo when he said this. That's not where he was going. But again, it's such a sticky story, and we don't have the culture around it, and we miss the translation. So what I want to do is I want to help give the translation to you and help you understand what's going on. And Austin, if you'll come up here and help me real quick so that I can help people see what's going on. All right, so Jesus says, look, if someone slaps you in the face, turn the other cheek. All right? And what Jesus is really talking about is he's talking about the friction, all right, that is created between the Roman soldier and the Hebrew peasants. Because remember, we're in occupied territory during Jesus' time. That the Roman soldiers have come to our home and they are subjugating us and oppressing us, and we're really slaves, okay? And so Jesus says, look, if a soldier comes up to you or someone that's put in charge by government and smacks you in the face, whoosh, I've wanted to do that to Austin for a long time. All right, so someone comes up and they smack you in the face. You and I normally have one of three initial reactions, and we have this, everybody has this to any kind of conflict. Number one, you have a reaction that says, I'm going to fight back, and so Austin may try to fight back. You have a reaction that says, I'm going to run away, and that often depends on the size of the person or thing in front of you that you're looking at going, this is a bad idea, let's run, all right? Or sometimes we just freeze, and we just melt. Okay, that's one of 3 normal reactions we have. And Jesus says, look, I don't want you to have a normal reaction. I want you to be smart when you encounter someone that's stronger than you, someone that's oppressing you, and someone that's going to use violence to try to oppress you and overcome you. I want you to be smart. I want you to be wise. Jesus says, look, if you're going to be my church, I need you to be so smart that when you encounter evil, evil's confused by your reaction and doesn't know what to do. All right? When you encounter evil, I want you to be so smart that evil's confused by your reaction and doesn't know what to do. All right? Now, in biblical times, the right hand was used for eating, for writing, for shaking hands. In the Old Testament, it's really cool. You actually strike a deal and you grab each other's thigh. You want to try that? No, let's not do that. You see a bunch of people walking around and, hey, dude. And so that was your right hand. That's what that right hand. But your left hand was used for when you went to the restroom, because there wasn't toilet paper at Kroger's that you could go down and buy, and so you had this left hand that was often used for unpleasant things. Are you with me? Anybody confused? If you are, raise your left hand. Okay, guy in the back. Well, I'll tweet it to you later, Dylan. Don't worry. All right. And so what you wouldn't do is you wouldn't smack anybody in the face with your left hand. You just didn't do that. Okay? And a lot of people, again, go, oh, that's what it's about. Turn the other cheek so it doesn't smack you with your left hand. But no, you're still missing the point of the scripture and the point of the story according to culture. All right? And so by Roman law, I, a soldier or someone in charge, I smack you across the face because why? You're lower than I am. You're a slave. I'm oppressing you. And again, in Jesus' time, I need to be very clear, in Jesus' time, I don't want anybody mistweeting this. In Jesus' time, you would smack somebody that was what? You would smack a slave or a woman. In Jesus' time, not now. All right? Everybody got this in Jesus' time? All right? You wouldn't do that now. All right? You don't hold slaves and you don't smack women now, okay? All right? But in Jesus' time, you could smack a slave or a woman, someone that was underneath you. And so the Roman soldier smacks him, and what Jesus says is turn the other cheek, and he says actually turn into it. Because you don't smack someone in the nose. That's weird. All right? It's just, you don't do that. Right? You don't smack someone in the nose. You smack them on the side of the face because you smack someone below you. Even today, if you see someone smacking someone and you go, ooh, that was kind of degrading right there, right? And so I smack Austin and I degrade him, and he now turns his face into me. When I go back to smack again, he goes, okay, if you're going to smack me, you're going to have to punch me in the nose. Wait a second. I thought Jesus said, like, turn the other cheek. That meant run away. Or that meant, hey, you're just going to be, I'm going to be passive and let you beat me up. And you're just going to beat the tar out of me. And everybody's going to see that and go, oh, look, he beat the tar out. No, Jesus says, look, encounter the bully, all right, the oppressor, and say, you're not going to oppress me. You're going to see me as equal. So you smack me and say that I'm lower than you are. The next time you go to smack me, I'm going to turn my face in, and you better punch me. You see, by Roman law, if you punched someone, they were your equal. And so the oppressor, by continuing to act with violence, actually now says, you're no longer lower than me. Yes, you are my equal. And while you may have your nose over here for a moment, you have just changed the entire system of behavior. That the Roman government no longer oppresses you, but sees you as an equal. And no Roman soldier wants to have to deal with their general who says, why did you punch that guy and prove to him that they are now equal to us? They're dogs. Why would you let him do that? And you have to explain now that, well, I was really angry and I lost my temper and I went ahead and punched him, and now I'm in the stockades. So the initial slap said, I'm better than you. But turning the other cheek calls out the entire value of the system. It says, go ahead and punch me. I am now your equal. I'm not inferior. And when you punch me, you're affirming that. Let's give Austin a big hand for helping out. Again, all Jesus is doing is pointing out, look, things are not as they should be. Things are not as they should be. But that doesn't mean we have to be passive and like it. In fact, Jesus isn't saying, look, just run away from every fight. In fact, he's saying, look, there's going to be fights that come to you. You don't have to go out and look for them. But when they come to you, I want you to react in such a way that the rest of the world kind of goes, that's brilliant. That's so smart. Wow, look at that. And that evil kind of goes, I don't know what to do with this. These people that follow Jesus are so smart. I don't know how to keep beating them up and oppressing them. Let's discover what he says next. Next slide. Jesus says this, if anyone wants to sue you or take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. Now, this one really gets lost in translation for us because when I got dressed today, first of all, I never put on a coat because it was warm outside, all right? And the other thing is that I'm wearing more than a shirt, all right? So today, if you came to me and said, hey, anybody wants to sue you, give them your coat, I'd be, all right, here's my coat. That's weird. Oh, give them your shirt as well. And okay, there's my shirt. But I still have on my pants and my whatever I'm wearing under my pants. Some of you hopefully are wearing something under your pants. I got my socks and shoes. I got all this still on. But in Jesus' day, you only had an outer coat and an inner coat. An outer coat and an inner coat. And so if someone takes your inner coat and then sues you, all right, and says, give me your outer coat, you're now left there. Some of you are like, can we say that word in church? Can we say naked in church? Yeah. So Taco, our 2-year-old, he doesn't say naked, he says nay-nay. Daddy, you're nay-nay. I said, no, you're nay-nay. Get your diaper on there, naked butt. All right? So if you give them your outer coat and your inner coat, you're now standing there nay-nay for all the world to see. Okay? Now, here's what's really interesting about this, okay? So, in the Old Testament, when you would strike a deal and say to someone, look, I owe you money, one of the things that you might do is you might give them your undercoat as a pledge to say, look, I owe youing this with my undercoat, and I will come back and get this because I'm going to go home and get the money, or next week I'm going to have this figured out, or we've got this lamb that was just born, but I need to leave it with its mom so that it gets old enough, but I owe you a lamb, and so I'm giving you my undercoat as a pledge that I'm coming back, and then in 2 more weeks or a week or whatever, I'll bring this lamb to you, and you give me my coat back, and it's just an even trade. And so it was understood that that's how kind of business was done. You would give someone your undercoat, and you still had your outer coat. But Jesus says, so someone comes along that's so vindictive, that's so evil that they actually want to sue their brother and sister, the family of Israel that's there. And someone comes along and they're so self-righteous, all right, that I'm going to sue you. I'm going to take you to court because the two of you aren't smart enough to work it out on your own. Gosh, I feel like I'm talking to my kids in the back of the car right now. The two of you aren't smart enough to work this out on your own. All right, and Jesus says, someone comes along and says, I'm going to sue you because you can't work it out on your own, and they want your undercoat. Jesus says, give them your undercoat, and then go ahead and give them your outer coat so that you're left there nay-nay. Now today, when we see someone nay-nay, we don't think, well, I bet there's something biblical going on there. We think that person's crazy, right? And we don't immediately do something. We call the cops and say, hey, there's a streaker going down, and Ray Stevens isn't even singing, so we need to get this dude locked up, right? Those of you that know this song, you really appreciated the joke. Those of you don't, it's okay. And so what we do is we call the cops because the shame is on the person that's being naked. But in Jesus' time, if you were wandering around naked, the first person in the community that saw the person naked, it was literally their job and responsibility to care for the entire community by running and getting you a coat. And shame on any community that was so self-prideful and so ungraceful and so not acting like God that they would allow someone to walk around without a coat. And so if I saw you naked, I would immediately run up and take my coat off and put it on you and take you to my house and say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but it's really bad, dude. You're naked, and the shame is on me if I don't rescue you. And you're coming to my house. We're getting you clothes right now. And the next person that saw you, if I didn't get to you, they were coming. Like the entire community would run to that person to cover up their naked. Why? Because it was a shame on the community to have someone running around in their area that was nay-nay. So watch how this works. Here's the self-righteous person who couldn't figure out how to work out the deal and couldn't figure out how to be. And so they come and, you know what? You owe me all this money. Give me your coat. And Jesus says, look, if they're going to act like that, not only give them one coat, but give them both coats and stand there naked. And so you're standing there naked, and here's the self-righteous person who couldn't figure out how to work a deal with it, holding 2 coats in your hand, and the entire village suddenly sees a naked person, and they're running to you. And guess what? The first person that gets there suddenly stops and goes, naked dude and you have his 2 coats in your hand. And guess who suddenly becomes the villain? The oppressor, right? The self-righteous person, right? The one who thought they had it all together and came in and said, no, God's on my side. It's all perfect. And I'm suing you. I'm taking everything you got. And Jesus says, no. Reverse it. Flip it around and say to the oppressor, look, you can have everything because I'm going to change the power system. I'm going to stand here naked. And the shame is on who? The community that gathers is now going to look at you and go, hey, don't ever do business with this person. They're so vindictive, so self-righteous, that they're not willing to work out a deal that the guy could even keep his clothes. And the power situation flips over and changes. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And history, we've seen this over and over again. One of my favorite stories is of Martin Luther King in Alabama, and the kids are being hosed down. All right, and we have photos of that that still exist where we just see people being shot down by fire hoses and stuff. And one of my favorite stories is in the book, I may not get there with you, that I read, is that the one reporter, a white guy from New York, is standing there and he's shooting pictures of this. And when he sees these kids getting hosed down and literally being blown away, and the skin, their very own skin is being torn off as they're being dragged along the road by the hose. They're just being knocked down and pushed off. And this one reporter is running over to save one of the kids, and Martin Luther King actually grabs the reporter by the neck and almost flips his feet out from underneath him. And the reporter says, what are you doing? We've got to go stop this. We've got to go rescue this. And Martin Luther King says, look, those kids are standing in the face of evil doing exactly what Jesus has called them to do, and I need you to do what Jesus has called you to do, and I need you to go shoot photos of this so that the rest of the world sees the injustice that's going on down here. I need you to tell the story of what's taking place so the rest of the country is ashamed of the actions that are going on down here. What was he doing? He was saying, look, right now that they said, give me your coat, and so we just gave them both. And I just need you to share the story so we can see the reversal, so that we can see who the real villain is in the story. And over again in history, the oppressors have been overcome, not by violence, not by a reaction to fight, but by turning the other cheek, by being really smart and saying, you want my coat? Here's both of them. Ha ha, I'm Nene. Jesus goes on. He gives us one more of these. Just, wow, change everything around. He says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Now again, you may have heard this. When you Google this, all kinds of bizarre stuff pops up about how to be a real friend and stuff. And I read this and I go, who's reading this that thinks this is about friendship? Because I've never had a friend who forced me to go anywhere with them, yet alone walk a mile with them. Because that's not what friends do. The friends say, hey, you want to walk with me? And we all go, yeah, sure. Or, nah, I want to stay here. And we walk away friends, or we walk together friends. Friends don't force someone to go a mile. So who is it that would force someone in Jesus' culture to walk a mile? Well, we're back to the Roman soldiers. You see, the Roman soldiers had this huge pack, you can see on the screen here, that they would have had to carry. It would weigh up to about 70 to 80 pounds. And so they had this huge pack, and they would be carrying this huge pack. And what they could do is they could grab any peasant they wanted, anybody, again, that was under them, that they were oppressing, and they could say to them, you've got to carry this pack for me. And so the Roman soldier could literally lay it down and oppress you with the sword and say, carry my pack or you die. And if you wouldn't carry their pack, they literally could kill you by law. Now, Roman law is a little weird because there are things in the law that make sense and then things that we read and go, that doesn't make sense at all. It's much like today's laws. And so what we have is the Roman soldier is oppressing you and says, all right, carry my pack. And so you pick it up because what? You don't want to die. You don't want to leave your family without a father, without a mother, or you may be a kid trying to carry this pack. And so Jesus says, look, if someone oppresses you and says, carry my pack for a mile. Because Roman law said you could only carry a pack. You could only force someone to carry your pack for 1 mile. After that, if the general in command saw you forcing someone to carry your pack for more than 1 mile, you were suddenly in trouble. And so if the general sees you and says, hey, that kid's been carrying your pack for the past 3 miles, guess who's in trouble? Not the kid that's carrying the pack, who's afraid for his life, but the soldier, the oppressor, who has forced the kid to carry the pack. So just watch how this works, all right? You carry my pack for a mile. Okay, I'm going to do this. And Jesus said, what? Okay, we get 1 mile, and then we just keep going. Right? Like, all right, hey, kid, it's the mile mark. Give me my pack back. No, I'm just going to keep going. No, hey, kid, give me my pack back. And no, I'm just going to keep going. It's okay. No, kid, put the pack down. Literally, kid, I got a sword. No, I'm just going to keep going. Kid, you give me that pack. If my general sees me. Now watch. The person with the sword literally is begging you to stop doing what you originally oppressed them to do. How brilliant is that? Right? And the power's reversed, right? You're the one that's being oppressed, carrying the pack, and suddenly you got all the power. No, I'm going to keep. In fact, I feel like walking about 10 miles today. When we stop for camp, I may walk right through the general's tent and just keep going. How many times has that happened before the Roman soldiers go, psst, don't ask the Jews to carry your pack. They just don't get it. They keep going, and then we get in trouble. You see, Jesus takes the very core of what is going on and says, let me flip it around. He says to the church, when you encounter evil, I need you not to resist it, not to fight it. I need you to be so brilliant, evil doesn't know what to do with your actions. It's just a couple ways you can apply this. Ready? Just a couple ways you can apply this. Parents, let me see your hands. If you're a parent now, you've ever been a parent? Come on, there we go. All right, there's 7 of you. Wonderful. All right. So I don't know if any of you have trouble with your kids and you end up in a yelling match with your kids ever. Normally, I see this stereotypically from the mom and the daughter. All right. And I remember my mom and my sister going at it. I don't ever remember my mom and I yelling at each other, or my mom and my brothers yelling at each other. Like, mom yelled and we all just kind of listened and went on. But my sister and her would get into fights. And the other day I was over at my parents' house, and I have a niece named Kate who is 4, and Kate's a bass. And she sounds like she's been smoking for about 40 years. And when Kate talks, it sounds like this. And you go, hey, Kate. She's this beautiful, blonde, curly-haired girl. And she comes up, hi, Uncle Aaron. I'm like, whoa. Did you swallow a beast? Is it? And Kate has my brother's stubborn personality to a T. All right, and she's got this game down. And I'm standing out in the living room. We're all getting ready to go somewhere. And my mom's trying to get shoes on Kate, but Kate doesn't want those shoes on. Lord have mercy. And Kate begins to yell and scream at my mom. And it is a fight. And what Kate has that none of the rest of us have, is she has that gift from my sister, has the ability to find my mom's buttons and go, that's the one I want to push. Boom. And send you into psycho mode. Right? My mom is a trained guidance counselor, right? At an elementary school. And she is in a fight with a verbal yelling match with a 4-year-old. Now I'm standing in the hall going, I'm glad no one at your school sees this, because you'd be fired today. Not only that, but I think you're losing. Like, you should be winning. It's a 4-year-old. You should be winning this. And you're going to put these shoes on, so help me God. I will duct tape them to your legs and strap them up around your head. I'm not putting those shoes on, Grandma. I'm not going to. You will kill me before I put those shoes on. Little girl, I am your grandma. I'm bigger than you. You're putting those shoes on. Grandma, you can't make me do anything. I don't want to wear those shoes. And I'm standing in the hall going, if Kate wins, how do we move on? Like, do we just ignore everything my mom says from then on? Like, you couldn't overcome the 4-year-old? But, before I start pointing fingers at my mom, I go, man, I've had those conversations. In fact, I have those conversations weekly with a 2-year-old. You're going to put that diaper on? No. Yes, you get back here. I'm going to hang you up. The next thing I know, I'm wearing a diaper. I'm like, how did that get on me? And again, Jesus says, look, let's not be silly. Parenting tip. Just stop fighting. You have the power. You just forgot it for a moment and thought you could verbally overcome your teenager. You can't. They have bigger lungs than you do. They shrink when you get older, right? Because you aren't used to yelling as much. So just be smarter. your child starts yelling at you, the teenagers, I ain't going to, you ain't, just, okay. We'll see how that works. And then just leave. Now, number one, you've just taught your child how to fight. Because there's no job that they can have where they can yell with the boss and that's going to work well for them. Right? And there's no marriage where yelling at each other works well for very long. Right? And so you're teaching them how to be mature and do relationships. So just leave. And when they go to turn on their phone and send a text and they find out that you've canceled their service for a moment. Right? And suddenly they go, Mom, where's my phone? And you go, no, remember when you were yelling at me? You see, I'm trying to teach you respect, and that's not how you respect someone. And then they yell at you again and go, it's okay. It doesn't need to be on until like next week. And if you have teenagers like I have teenagers, that's like a week in hell. And maybe it's not the phone. Maybe it's you. You just leave their room where they're screaming at you, walk in and hide the Xbox. You know, they were supposed to take out the trash, put it like underneath the trash bag. I say, well, someday you'll be able to find it when you do your chores. Right? See, Jesus is just saying, look, be smarter. Be smarter. Be smarter. That's just parenting ways. And in your marriage, look, we need to be smarter. We have a rule, and I tell everybody who comes to us for marriage coaching, I say, look, well, if you've been at the same problem for more than a week or two, and then Allie and I kind of have this rule, if we are messing with the same problem for a month, if we mess with the same problem for a month, we go see a counselor. We go get help. Why? Because we don't know how to be smarter. And so we just have the rule, if we run into the same brick wall for a month, let's stop running into the wall and go see if somebody else can help us move the wall. Because we want to be smarter. Because we have a God who said, look, stop beating your head against the wall. Be wise when you encounter evil, when you encounter obstacles. And when I run into that friend who says, look, Jesus doesn't exist, and I'm an atheist, and I don't go, no, you don't know. You're going to go to hell, and you're going to burn, and you're going to rot. And that's dumb. That's not how Jesus did it. Jesus just continued to ask questions and love that person regardless. Because Jesus knew there weren't any real atheists. Eventually a life situation happens and we all go, holy cow, that shook me to the core. And suddenly there's open doors that weren't there beforehand. And we can start to say, hey, I want you to know in your loneliness, maybe there's something more going on than what you see. Now in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, you are blessed as His beautiful and sacred children. May you go forth as a body broken, leaky vessels, sharing the grace and glory of Jesus Christ. Wise, that when you encounter evil, evil goes, I don't know what to do. You're so smart. In the grace of our Lord and Savior, may you go forth. Amen.